All right, so the truth is, everybody loves Andrew Huberman. If you don't know who Andrew Huberman is, he is a Stanford scientist who is now on a mission with his podcast and his short clips to help give out free medical information to all of humanity. Absolutely fantastic dude. And the types of stuff that he talks about is so practical, so helpful for daily life. So I suggest going and checking this man out. Today, we're just going to go through and watch some of his most viewed clips and download some of the amazing information that he has to share. So let's do it. How to learn a skill faster.
The other thing that really favors neuroplasticity are what are called gap effects. Anytime you're learning something, it pays to have random intervals in which you stop and do nothing. You're practicing a scale or you're practicing a piece of music. Every once in a while, if you have a timer that goes off randomly, or the instructor or teacher tells you stop, and you attempt to do nothing. You could close your eyes or keep them open, but you stop the motor pattern, or you stop trying to do the math problem, or you stop trying to do the physical sequence that you were doing. Turns out that when we sleep, there's a rapid replay of these sequences of events during the day, but at much higher speed. So per unit time, you're getting about 10 to 60 times the replay or repetition of what you're doing during the day. During these brief gaps, these 10-second gaps that are introduced while awake during your learning, you get a 10 to 20 times repeat of whatever sequence you were trying to learn.
Whoa. That makes a ton of sense to me because I found a super helpful way to learn is to read over the things I'm trying to memorize at night. And then it feels like throughout sleep, it just like somehow downloads faster. And that sounds very similar, that getting into this pause space, your brain will just naturally go into a processing state where it's allowed to digest what you just took in. That's beautiful. How to stop being lazy.
When you're suffering or you're lazy or you're procrastinating, doing something that's harder than the state that you're in bounces you back much faster. It's in the dynamics of dopamine. It's sort of crazy. If you know how people are procrastinating to write something and they start cleaning the house, something they normally don't want to do. Well, it's just something that's easier than the thing that you're supposed to do.
Right.
If you do something that's even harder than the thing that you're trying to avoid, all of a sudden you're able to do that. And you're like, oh, okay, well, it's just psychology, right? No, it's not psychology alone. Once dopamine is deployed at that level, you're a different person.
Oh my goodness, that's like reverse psychology, that when you feel lazy, do something harder than what you're avoiding to do, because it's going to make your brain and body stronger and then literally have you a level above what you think you're even capable of. That's beautiful. Why cold showers are so life-changing.
When you get into cold water, as long as you don't stay in there to the point where you start becoming hypothermic, you actually are increasing your metabolism and body heat. This is incredible, but there's a paper published in the European Journal of Physiology. It showed that there's a 2.5x huge increase in dopamine release, very long lasting. 2.5x is the amount of dopamine that's triggered by the use of cocaine. But the difference is cocaine has a very sharp peak on it and then it falls, which is why people become habitual users. But this long sustained increase in dopamine from cold water exposure of anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes is really powerful.
I've definitely personally found that a cold shower in the morning feels like it gives me a boost, and then I ride that boost, which lines up perfectly with what he's saying. That's cool. 3 things you should never do in the morning.
The worst possible things in the morning to set their day up for failure, what would they be?
Wake up and stay in bed. There are good reasons to stay in bed in the morning, but once those are completed, then staying in bed, curtains drawn, just passively scrolling on social media. There are neurobiological data showing that when you are upright, you actually are stimulating this area of the brain called locus ceruleus, whereas when you recline, you actually are less alert. And the postural stuff is really bad too. This is so common now, this C-shaped human thing, that it almost feels strange to be upright. But it's mostly about this sort of randomization of activities. Sort of making a cup of coffee while texting. Then they're scattering that in with like a little bit of work, but then something hits that's stressful and they're diverting their attention. So building in this attention deficit-like disorder.
I love that. I've definitely noticed that the way that I start my day, like the first 30 minutes to an hour, sets up my brain for how it's going to function for the rest of the day. Like if I'm doing a bunch of random stuff in the morning and texting, my brain is that disheveled throughout the day. So I find that beautiful, that even if you just set a clear way of moving through your morning, you're going to set more clarity in the way you move through the rest of your day. How to lose fat fast. Let's see.
Can you not eat until 2 p.m.? He's like, yeah, I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm like, great, drink coffee, drink water, and in the morning get up and just get on, either run or get on some exercise bike and just pedal like someone's chasing you with a syringe full of poison. And so there's a pretty straightforward formula where when you've been asleep all night, your fuel reserves, like you've got fuel in your fat, but you got fuel in your fat, you've got fuel in your muscles that can be burned, and you got fuel in your liver. It's called glycogen. And when you wake up early, all of that is as low as it's going to be because you haven't been eating anything.
Gotcha.
And so if you exercise then, your body starts dropping into your body fat stores quicker.
If you're trying to lose fat, first thing in the morning, get your cardio in. Why intelligent people don't do well in life.
I don't think most of us are interested in walking around knowing how to remember everything. In fact, there are some interesting studies looking at humans who over-remember, and they suffer tremendously because they remember all sorts of things, like the number at the top of their receipt at the bodega that they bought a Coca-Cola 10
That'd be
years
insane.
ago. This is useless information for most people. They don't do well in life, really. So the goal isn't to remember everything. The goal is to be selective about your brain changes.
Brain changes? The coolest thing I have been learning recently is that in the morning and in the evening, take some time to think the thoughts that you want to think and remind yourself of the thoughts that you don't want to think. And that creates an awareness throughout your day of knowing what things you don't want to go towards and also rewiring the things that you want to know and remember. It's beautiful. 30 days dopamine reset to treat any addiction.
In your discussion with Dr. Anna Lemke, you were talking about abstaining from people's drug of choice for 30 days to reset the dopamine reward pathway. And indeed, that is the prescriptive that Dr. Anna Lemke gives for most all addictions and for people that are suffering from mild or even severe depression related to dopamine-seeking behaviors, social media, video games, sex, food, etc. However, of course, in the instance of food or in some other addictions, you can't abstain for 30 days. That would be terrible to abstain for food for 30 days. I'm sure people have done it, but it is not healthy to do. Certain things like alcohol and drugs, people can abstain for 30 days in efforts to never go back to them again.
I think a great thing to do on the daily is to check in with what things in your life you're doing that are just like completely habitual for dopamine hits. And whenever I notice that sort of thing in myself, I just try for a day to stay away from it and see how it makes me feel. And usually I feel better throughout the day. It's like I don't even feel worse. I don't feel a yearning for it. I'm like, oh, I feel like powerful and more alive without needing it. So definitely something to try. More than 6 hours of sleep is killing your brain performance? This cannot be.
Consistently getting about the same amount of sleep is better than just getting more sleep. And I think nowadays so many people are just aiming for more sleep, and they're rather troubled about the fact that they're only getting 5 hours or they're only getting 6 hours in some cases. It may be the case that they are sleep deprived and they need more sleep, but some people just have a lower sleep need. And I find great relief personally in the fact that consistently getting, for me, about 6 hours or 6.5 hours is going to be more beneficial than constantly striving for 8 or 9 and finding that some nights I'm getting 5 and sometimes I'm getting 9 and varying around the mean. Every hour variation in sleep, regardless of whether or not I was more sleep than one typically got, there was a 17% reduction in performance on this particular exam type. And so this is powerful. This means that we should strive for a regular.
That's a really cool flip because everyone says get 8-9 hours of sleep. No, it's all about having a schedule that your body feels really good on. That's going to set a circadian rhythm where your melatonin starts to fire at the same time and your cortisol in the morning starts to fire at the same time. And once you're tapping into a cycle like that, your brain is just going to be working at a higher ability. How smoking and vaping accelerates skin aging.
So it's very clear that smoking, vaping, dipping, or snuffing is bad for skin appearance and health. Bad, bad, bad. Every dermatologist said this. Why? Well, with smoking, you can imagine why. Okay, a lot of carcinogens and toxic end products generated from smoking, even from vaping. Yes, even from vaping, it will make your skin age faster. That's clear. But it's also the substance itself. Why? All of those things, in addition to increasing inflammation, nicotine itself is a vasoconstrictor, so you're doing the exact opposite of what you want when it comes to skin health and appearance. And that's why people take things like BPC 157. That's why people take nicotinamide. That's why people are trying to improve the hydration status of their skin. So if you're somebody that's vaping nicotine or even taking nicotine in some other form, pouch or smoking nicotine, and you're interested in having youthful appearing skin, you are really shooting yourself in the face.
Shooting yourself in the face. Hey, Good inspiration to not vape nicotine. All right, let's find like one more good one. I want something that like really hits hard. How to get better sleep.
The path to a really great night's sleep starts in the morning. Wake up. If you want to be alert, get as much bright light in your eyes as you can, but ideally sunlight. It sets in motion a big increase in cortisol, but it's a healthy increase that leads to alertness. Triggers an increase in body temperature, which is important for waking up, and it sets a timer on melatonin release so that about 16 hours later, your melatonin levels are going to go up. You do that most days. If you miss a day, no big deal. If you miss 2 days, you're starting to drift. And when I say drift, I mean that these neurochemical systems are going to start to get out of sync with the daylight cycle. That morning light pulse is, I say light pulse, light viewing is immensely important. A drift in cortisol peak toward the later day is a signature of depression and waking up at 3, 4 in the morning and not being able to fall back asleep. Signature of depression.
Drift in cortisol peak. So you'll get that drift if you don't get that light exposure early in the morning.
That's right. You're going to get a big increase in cortisol at some point every 24 hours. You want that to be early in the day and when you want to be alert.
Getting out in the sun triggers a cortisol response, and that will give you a nice boost in terms of your focused, intense activity. And if you get that cortisol boost at night, that's not going to be good. So get out in the sun in the morning. Beautiful tips. Thank you, Andrew Huberman. You're the man.